the resources.
Ron, good morning. Ron Hundley, what's his story? Where's he from? Did he start off in the same parish, or did he come on board afterwards, or what's his background?
What exactly are
Ron and Father James knew each other. They were in Curcio or something like that together. So they'd known each other. Their faith journeys kind of paralleled, so they were good friends. But Ron really got into Alpha. He found his program, and he sort of brought it to Father James. Well, they both kind of knew it, but he was like, Father James, this is the thing to get into. He was living in another town. He was a salesman for pharmaceuticals. Yep. So he's really, really good at like sales and public speaking. Like he's a Toastmaster, top layer, whatever that is. And anyways, when Father James and I were in Alpha in London, he just had no. It was he heard the Holy Spirit saying, "You got to hire Ron. You have to hire Ron." So Ron said he would do Alpha part-time, 20 hours a week, in the evenings and weekends. And then we offered him a part-time job, and he moved his family from one city to another. And then eventually we were able to get enough money to hire him full-time. He then went on to help get Divine Renovation off the ground. And he's our Alpha specialist. Like anything to do with Alpha Man, he knows it. And he's in Australia right now on a 12-day speaking tour.
You can keep eating after we pray. So why don't we stand up? We got a lot to do today, a lot to accomplish. So we're going to just start with, obviously, with a prayer, to just opening ourselves to the power of the Holy Spirit. So Lord, we just invite you right now to come in power and grace. Pour out your Spirit upon us. Come with your glory, Lord. Come with your power. Come, Holy Spirit. Come. Great is your faithfulness, O God. You wrestle with the sinner's restless heart. You lead us by still waters and to mercy, and nothing can keep us apart. So remember your people, remember your children, remember facility. Move in our hearts, move in our minds. Come with your grace. Lord, your power is made perfect in our weakness. Come, Lord. Come, Lord Jesus. Come, Lord Jesus. We ask the angels, the saints, our blessed Mother on this morning. Pray with us here. Lay hands upon us. Heaven, come. We ask our guardian angels to intercede for us this day. Come, Holy Spirit. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Lord, I come as I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. 'Cause every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. When sin runs deep, when sin runs deep, your grace is more. When grace is found, it's where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Teach my song. Teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Teach my song. So teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. 'Cause every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Let's pray that again. Let's give God any limitations we might put on him today. Any limitations we put on him in what he can do in our churches, in our parishes, in our hearts. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need Come, Holy Spirit. Lord, we want to just open you today with Mary's heart. Send angels to surround us in this room. Come, Holy Spirit, through the heart of Mary, Jesus. Thank you for the Son this morning, Lord. Thank you for these people, Lord God. Thank you for each one of us in our faith. Come, Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Just had an image of Our Lady being overshadowed by the Spirit. Just invite us all to let the Spirit overshadow us. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for. To be overcome by your presence, Lord. Just give God praise, Lord. Just whatever's on your heart, just thank Him right now. Let's just thank our Lord. Thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you, Jesus, for family, friends. Thank you for the Spirit, for the Word. Thank you, God. Thank you for this song. Thank you for the gift of praise and worship and music. For your Eucharistic heart. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. For our ups, our downs, our highs, our lows, we praise you, Lord. We praise you in the storms of life. We praise you, Lord. Glory to you, Jesus. We praise you in sickness and health, Lord. Praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Jesus. Thank you for our struggles that we each have, Lord, and our challenges. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for not giving us everything, for giving us dependent hearts. Praise you, God. Dissolve any fears, any doubts. Come, Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit. With Mary's hand on our hearts, Hail Mary,
full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death.
Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Whew, I feel all filled up. Does that feel good? Thank you, Father.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I have to figure out how to get this turned off. I'm on a website.
Oh.
Isn't that a great way to start the day?
It is.
Every day.
Every day should be like that.
And every night.
Every day.
And all day
And all
long.
day
Some
long.
will attend our.
Father Michael's lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't he all day?
Father Michael CD.
Father
yeah.
Michael's greatest hits.
You're working on it, aren't you, Father Michael?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back. And I can't escape. Oh, it's F11. Oh, see, I wouldn't
See, without, it's like, you don't know the
password, then you know, sucks to you sort of thing.
You got it.
Alrighty. So
G'day.
that's good day.
Isn't Matt Marsh from up there, isn't he? Canada?
Who's this?
Matt Marsh?
Yep, Matt Martin. Yep, just thought I'd point that
Your
out.
summary smile.
Summer smiles.
Welcome. Great. So if anybody, I'll just put this here. If anybody wants, I'm going to set up a Google Drive, a shared Google Drive with all the stuff I've gone through today and pastoral council samples and all, like anything if you just want to have access to it. So, and we have a new person here, and it's Chris. Hi, Chris. Welcome. We're going to do introductions in about 2 seconds. Well, sort of revival or icebreaker, revival stuff. All right. Yep. Wait a minute. I have to get another cup of coffee in my mouth.
If you guys, if any, I sent you the link this morning or yesterday. If anyone wants the stream or the link, let me know, and I'll send it to your parishes or to. I sent it to Father Camp Schneider too. But anyhow, it's being recorded. So if you want to go through it and review it and pray through it more, just so you know. Cool.
Say, who's that crazy lady up there? So let's get that another little warm up. How's that? So yesterday we all heard a story about your name. So now I'd like you to tell us a story about your hometown or where you were born. Okay? And it would help if you just repeated your name because we have a few new people. So my name is Eileen from St. Benedict. I'm one of 7. And when I just started high school, and my baby sister had just started preschool, and my 5 brothers were all in school. The school caught on fire and burnt to the ground, the main school. Now, luckily everyone was fine. There was no injuries or whatever. They were using a blowtorch to unfreeze some pipes that had gotten frozen, because I am from Canada, you know. And it had caught the insulation in the ceiling on fire, and then it ran through the whole ceiling, and they started to see the smoke, and they got all the kids out before the ceiling caved in. However, from that day for the next year and a half, my mother had 7 children going to 7 different schools, because each grade was shipped off to a different school. So that's my story from Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Canada. So Kathy, tell us a story about your hometown.
Well, I'm Kathy Atencio, Kathleen. Gosh, I'm from Omaha, I don't know what else. This may not sit very well with some people in here, but I'm not a Husker fan. I'm a Notre Dame fan. My dad was Irish, and he was a big Notre Dame fan, and so I'm not really into the Huskers, and also the Yankees. So that gives a lot of enemies, I think. But other than that, my parents were both from here, born and raised here. My grandparents came from Ireland during the great-grandparents from the potato famine, and settled in Massachusetts at first, and then migrated to Omaha, and Omaha to me is home, and I love it. And I moved to the Southwest when I was younger and met my husband, and we moved back here to be close to family. So it's been a good move for us. And I don't know what else to
That's
say.
fine, that's fine. This whole story that, you're from Omaha, really.
Yeah.
So what, if you're from Omaha, you're an Omaha-ian or Omaha-ite? Omaha-in. Oh, that's way too hard for me to say. Omaha-ha-ha-ha. You're an Omaha-ha-han. Jim, what's your hometown?
Jim Bogner. My hometown is Leavenworth, Kansas. And so it's outside, about 30 miles outside Kansas City. My parents owned a bakery, and so I grew up in that, helping them out, going to school. The grade school I went to was a Catholic grade school, small one, so grades 1, 2, and 3 were in one room, 4 and 5 and 6 were in another room, and 7 and 8 were in the third room in that school. And then traveled around and then wound up in Omaha here because of work.
Okay, so you're originally from Kansas.
Yes. Yes.
We're not in Kansas anymore. I heard that's a famous line. Tony, welcome.
Welcome.
This is Tony that we didn't have a chance to meet last night, but Tony's going to tell us a story about his hometown. Or where are you from?
I am an Iowegian. I'm originally from Iowa, Council Bluffs. My wife and I moved out here to this area about 3 years ago. I retired at about 5 years ago. My wife is still working, trying to move herself into the retirement game. She just still doesn't want to let go. But anyway, I'm a Credo Catholic. Went to Queen of Apostles Church in Council Bluffs, then to St. Albert's High School, and then on to my career. But and unfortunately, with a lot of other people that, as with her, I'm more of an Iowa fan. But trust me, it wasn't easy working in Omaha and being an Iowa fan, because I didn't dare say my true allegiance. You know, I just kind of said, oh yeah, they're okay, or whatever, just kind of got along. But my career is long. I started out as a meat cutter and ended up in computers. So that's the way it's been over the last few
All right.
millennia.
Thanks for telling us. Yeah. So tell me a story about your, like, what town were you born in, and a story about that town. So, Joe, you're up.
Story about town.
Where were you born? Where are you from?
Yeah, I am
Are you
also
from? Are you an
originally Iowan.
Omahaan?
I was born in Des Moines, but
Ah.
before I was 3 years old, we lived in West Des Moines. That's where I really grew up. That was actually the old Valley Junction. It was a railroad stop, and now it's a big antique center, old town West Des Moines. From a more personal standpoint, my father and mother were very involved in Sacred Heart Church there in West Des Moines. And my dad was also an insurance salesman. And his favorite little saying to me when he said, you were doing such and such, was a little bird told me.
Oh,
There
yeah.
were little birds in West Des Moines hanging around knowing what I was up to. So like the first time I had a cigarette,
And a little bird told.
he found out, so just, I couldn't get away with much of anything when I was growing up in town.
Cool. Thank you. Becky.
Oh, boy. Becky Comitage. I'm from Bellevue. Nothing exciting ever happens.
The oldest town in Nebraska.
It's the oldest
There
town in
you go.
Nebraska.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, now you know. Nothing really exciting happens there, but something did happen to me once there. Wasn't a good thing, but it was probably, I don't know. Walking out of Southwards where I worked, everybody knows where that is. Walking up the hill, somebody followed me out of, I just thought it was a customer, followed me up the hill, knocked me down. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know what he was doing. But I got up, ran up, because we just lived right up the hill. Knocked on the door because it was locked. I'm from a family of 9 kids. Jenny answered the door. She picked me up, carried me in the house. Mom, a dog attacked her, a dog attacked her, because I had blood and stuff on my face. Some guy had just come up behind me, pushed me down, and just cut my hair off. I don't know what he was doing. But it wasn't that scary. But my family, I have 9 kids in our family, all pulled together. And my brother-in-law, my dad, they went searching in the truck, and it was like that. And then for days, probably months, my younger brothers had to walk me to work. It's like, she's never going to be alone. So 4 years later, the police called me on my first day after college on my job and said, he caught him in New Jersey, and he was cutting a girl's pigtail off. And they went and searched his apartment. Shoe boxes full of hair in his closet. But they caught him. End of story. It all turned out.
Wow. Okay, now, Will, that's a story we won't forget. All right, Dan, try to top that story. You win the story.
Well, I grew up in a town of 200 people in Iowa. It's called Moreland, Iowa. It's 6 miles from Fort Dodge, which you may not have heard of either, because that's only about 25 miles. That's in north central Iowa. It's about 3 hours from here. My parents lived there until about 5 years ago, and so my kids got to go there and see where I grew up in a little town of 200. The year that I went to kindergarten, they closed the school, so I had to go to a different school ways away. But the gym stayed there, and my priest used to take me there. One of our hometown priests used to take me, and we'd just play basketball together when I was a kid, which was very good for me. I mean, it was good to see a priest just as a friend and somebody to hang out with. So I'm trying to think what else about Moreland. That's about it.
That's good. Thank you. Joe, are you an Omahamian?
In Ames, Iowa, while Dad was going to school at ISU. But we moved, before I was 2? Yeah. Here, and so I've always considered Omaha to be my hometown. But it's kind of cool because I was the only one of my 3 siblings to be born in Iowa, so. But, I don't know. Dad talked very lightly about Moreland, but I almost consider that a hometown because I loved that place when I was a kid. You ride your bike everywhere, 2 parks, you know, church. Just go. You ran the town when you were 8 years old. So. I love Dad's hometown. So
that's great. Brett, tell us a story about your hometown.
I don't have a story.
Okay. What's your hometown?
I grew up or was raised in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic.
Oh.
Went through grade school and high school in Alamogordo, New Mexico, which means fat cottonwood. We had a McDonald's. Well, that was a big celebration. We had McDonald's. That was huge. Very small town kind of mentality. We'd hunt, we'd fish, we'd collect horny toads. We hated Texas. We did. I mean, New Mexico never had like a sports team, so most people would love the Dallas Cowboys because it's the closest, well, one of the better closest ones. But the reason we didn't like Texas, and we absolutely loved it, they never changed their license plates for the longest time. You know, that plain white and so we love to hate Texas.
Okay, thank you. That's good. Jean, tell us the story about your hometown.
My father was military, and so when Mom was pregnant with me, he had an assignment to Spain. I am number 5 of 7, so Mom was pregnant with me, and Dad asked, can you please at least wait till the baby is born? Okay, I was born in November, and Spain turned into Africa.
Oh my goodness.
So in January, I was 6 weeks old, and we moved to Africa, Northern Africa. We lived there for 2 years. I was 1 year, I was shy of being 1 year old and contracted, or I got malaria. And not ever having a young infant with malaria, they wanted my dad to fly with me, sick, to Spain, and he's like, no. So they flew a physician from Spain to Northern Africa and diagnosed me, and here I am today.
Praise God.
So after 2 years, we moved to Bellevue, or at the time it was Omaha, until they annexed. And so I'm from South Omaha.
Cool. Great.
And been here since.
Great story. Thank you. Chris, where's your hometown?
I grew up in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, which is about 40 miles northwest of Boston. And it's a very segregated, it was a mill town and factory town. So you had the Italian Catholic Church and the French Canadian Catholic Church. And we went to the French Canadian Catholic Church. And my best memory of growing up there is the school, St. Joseph's. And they had these beautiful nuns that taught. And the La Salette Fathers were there. And I just had a great experience of the beauty of religious life from a young age. So I'm very, very thankful for that. And then when I was 10, we moved to Arizona. So.
Cool. Great story. Thank you. Charlie.
So I'm Charlie Hoover, and I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. I may be the only Southerner in the room, and my accent, well, that's right, Nashville. My kids say, I think my accent has been tempered over the years. My kids swear not. And I can remember, like, when they were little, they say that when I talk to my mom or my family, it just comes back very quickly. You know, they would, like, come in from school when they were little, and they would need something, and I would say, well, give me 5 minutes. And they'd start running through the house going, give me 5 minutes, give me 5 minutes. But Greensboro is about 50 miles from Chapel Hill, which is a little college town where the University of North Carolina is. So those of you that are Husker fans and Cornhusker fans, just got to say, God's a Tar Heel. That's why the sky's Carolina.
That's a good one. Father Dan.
My parents, I'm the youngest of 6, but they were both born and raised here. They spent the first 10 years of their marriage in California. So I was born in California, and we moved back here 3 months after I was born. So I know nothing about the town I was born in, Concord, California. So yeah, Omaha's, I haven't lived here very much recently, but in the past 20 years, you know, but it's always kind of the home base, you know, where you grew up. But my dad's dad, during the Depression, he had a good job. He worked for Carroll Syrup, and so he was kind of a traveling salesman. And so my dad was a big, part of my friend, big BSer. So who knows if any of this is true, right? But it could be true. It's plausible. But so he had a chance to get in on the ground level of Kool-Aid, right? Because I was around Lake Undergraduate or something like that. It was around there. Hastings, right? Because he used to travel the circuit. But legend goes, he worked with the guy who was starting with the TV dinners. Was it Swanson Foods?
Yes. Yes.
So the first prototype TV dinner was made in my grandparents' oven.
Wow,
Probably not.
Alrighty.
I'm Rob Bronk. I was the only one. I'm second of 5, and I was the only one in our family that was born out of the state. My brothers and sisters always say, well, there's a reason for that. I was born in Columbia, Missouri, and then we grew up in Norfolk. And Norfolk is kind of an interesting place, is that we were hunting fish and all that. We hated Omahans.
Omahans, okay.
They would come and hunt.
Still do.
with reckless abandon, I might add. So I like a lot of Texans.
Yep.
And but Norfolk until the mid-70s had the largest livestock yard in the U.S. And then it kind of rolled towards Omaha. And then it also is a hometown of Johnny Carson. And when I was growing up, we had Benedictine sisters there that they have the monastery there, but they also ran Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital. And then we had Franciscan sisters that were teaching at the school. So we had, and in that area was at that time really kind of a high vocation area. And I just was telling Father that I found some information about my namesake again and what that kind of looked like. And we're going to look at it at lunch. But so that's Norfolk.
Cool.
Mark Fitzgerald from Norfolk now. I have lots of hometowns. My first hometown was Westwood, Massachusetts, my neighbor. And I come from generations of people who lived in Boston. My family was the first of any member of my extended family that moved west of the suburbs of Boston. I remember in 1968, my grandmother decided to take my brothers and myself, the 3 oldest in my family, out west to see the Pacific Ocean. And we loaded up in a station wagon. 1968, I remember her saying, boys, remember this, you may never see this again out west. She called Ohio the Midwest. And it was like, really? And so we went through Colorado, we went up to Rapid City, and the next February after that summer trip, we lived in Denver. And a few years later, we lived in Rapid City. I remember whenever I look at Mount Rushmore, my grandmother saying in 1968, look at this, boys, you may never see this again.
Thanks, Mark. That's great. Father, your turn.
Grew up in Fort Smith, Arkansas, so I'm a southerner too. Known for Judge Parker, the hanging judge. You ever seen the movie True Grit?
Yes.
John Wayne, the original True Grit. Remember at the end of the movie, he's going into Fort Smith to watch a hanging. And Judge Parker was known for not putting up with. In fact, the History Channel did a piece on this a few years ago on notorious. I can't remember the name of it, but Judge Parker was mentioned in there. And he didn't put up with stuff, so he hung a lot of outlaws. This is before the states. This is during. That was all the Louisiana territory. And he was the main guy, the jurisdiction there. So the gallows are still there. You know, it's a historical landmark. It was, of course, it was an old Indian fort back in the day. And so that's kind of what Fort Smith's known for. I grew up in a German Catholic church. That area is a lot of Germans. And the Benedictines, St. Subiaco Abbey is there. So the monks ran, they were assigned, or they ran that parish we were in, so a lot of Germans there. So kind of grew up under that Benedictine spirituality and German Catholic heritage there.
Great. Kathy.
Kathy Lemick, and I think my story would be about the blizzard. There was a big blizzard, and it was in the 70s, and I'm not totally sure of the year. I think it was 75 or 76.
You guys had snow in Omaha?
Oh, yeah. Oh, honey, we had snow in April.
Wow.
You didn't know it was snowy here?
I didn't think it was snowy here. It's always so hot.
Oh, in the summertime.
In the summertime, it's hot.
Anyway, my dad was a milkman back when he had milk delivery. And so his milk truck in the storm just couldn't get it to move, so they had him stay parked there, and they came and picked him up, and so his milk truck was there during the storm. Well, when he came back, people had used his milk truck for a grocery store and actually left money.
Yeah, isn't that
And
great?
wrote little notes, we took this, you know, hope this covers it, and there. So I just thought, I mean, as scary as that would be to leave your life's income out there in the middle of the street, just how good people were in appreciating that and respecting that, you know, I need this, but I know you need compensation for it too. And,
yeah, and it left an impression.
That was a neat story.
Great.
And yes, we get lots of snow.
Wow. Now I feel like I was ignorant. Okay, Chris.
Good morning. Chris Severs. I'm from Columbus, Nebraska, so it's about an hour and a half from here. So many good stories in Columbus. Like Joe, I mean, it's like freedom was in Columbus. You got on your bike and you could ride anywhere. And that was when your parents didn't care. You know, as long as you were home before the street lights came on, you were good. So we tooled around all over the town. I was raised, I'm the youngest of 12, and was raised in at St. Anthony's Parish. And Columbus is a highly Catholic. I didn't even know there was another religion. We have three Catholic, or three parishes, and so it's a highly Catholic population. It was small when I was growing up, about 18,000 people. And it's grown significantly since then. But some of my favorite memories are going down to the two-headed horse swing. It's this swing that was made out of this giant log, and somebody had carved a horse head on it either side. And you could fit about 8 kids on there. Wow. And the oldest would always have to push the youngest of us up on the log and get the swing going. Well, you could ride on that for hours, hours and hours. It was great. It was, I mean, so when I think of Columbus, I just think of some of the best times I've ever had. When I go back, I kind of wish I would have appreciated it more.
Yeah. Father Michael.
Oh, yeah. So I grew up in Carmichael's. It's a small town. There's a Carmichael's, California, I think, too. But it's Carmichael's, Pennsylvania. And it's like south of Pittsburgh, about an hour. And so it's a really small town. It's like kind of some of the smaller towns out west here in Nebraska. So I grew up in a small town just like that. And as far as stories, I mean, I just remember just being able to, like you were saying, Chris, just ride. We would go everywhere on our bikes. I hunt, tons of hunting. I love still hunt. And it's just been, it's just a cool place because there's not like a lot of traffic and not a lot of stuff, but we were outside nonstop. We played tennis ball outside all day long. We were in the woods all day long. Like, so we were never inside. You know, so it just had some great memories of just being in a small town and sitting outside and campfires late at night, just talking to people. It was great. So that's kind of my, if you will, memories of being growing up.
Great. Father, welcome. We're going to put you on the spot. You have to tell us, A, your name, and B, a story of your hometown. And welcome.
Hi. I'm Father Dan Kampschneider, pastor at St. Vincent de Paul Church here in Omaha. Grew up about 60 miles northwest of here, a little country parish called Sacred Heart of Jesus at Olean. And it was a community, 50, 60 families. We had one non-Catholic family living in the area. Everyone was Catholic. Everyone came every Sunday. And it was just, that was the standard. And so from that world, even today, they look at that, my hometown, that lens. And so for me, growing up, it was just the pastor there, small little country parish, country school. That little world shaped your sense of faith in God. Of course, God spoke through nature, both in the positive and the negative, so to speak, having rain, not rain, and the crops and all of that. So my story is really about growing up in the fields and just the land and the people working together. And when one farmer got sick or couldn't do his harvest, everyone else came in 1 or 2 days. It would take 2 or 3 weeks otherwise. And so there was just that sense of community. It was very powerful that way.
Wow. Isn't that awesome? Welcome.
Thank you.
And you can grab a seat at one of the tables, preferably with your parishioners, because we'll do things by church. All righty. So let's jump back into stuff. So last night, we spent a fair bit of time talking about the senior leadership team. To give you a sense of what is a senior leadership team, you know, that it is a team, they're teammates, and kind of what they do. So I'm going to put you a little bit to work. So if you could cluster in with your parish, okay, and work together. I'm going to give you, let's just take 15, 20 minutes. What would you now based on what you've heard, what do you think the terms of reference or the, you know, like what does a senior leadership team do? Like, you know, what is their purpose? What are some of the activities? What would be some of the decisions they might make? Just give some thought to that. Take 15, 20 minutes, pull yourselves together. You got pad boards.
I think, do you want us to mark it? Are we going to brief it afterwards? Or?
Yeah.
Do you want us to take one?
Well, help yourself. Yep, go right ahead. And there's double tables there. So what would be in scope and what would be out of scope? Like a senior leadership team does this, but they don't do that. And if you're looking for a sample, in your handouts, there is a document. I'll find the color. In your document package, in this sort of a yellowy color, on the last 2 pages are the terms of reference for a pastoral council. Gives you just a framework to think about.
Oh, no.
So we're supposed to do it on the SLT.
Yeah, for the senior leadership team, based on what you heard, what is in scope for them? What do they do? And what kind of things don't they do? So just to sort of apply it to your own areas. You go, oh, good, you got a package of material.
Well, I remember that they meet, they plan for more of a short term. She said 12 to 18 months out.
So it's in scope and out of scope, right?
Yeah. Like, what does a senior leadership team do? You can have that kind of conversation. What do they do? In a renewed parish. Yeah, based on, yeah. So in a new parish, you were starting this from scratch. You just opened up the doors of your brand spanking new church. and you put in a senior leadership team, and they're saying, okay, great, we're here, what should we do?
They look to the
So
short.
just to have a good discussion.
Direction.
No, just list what they do.
Direction.
Based upon what you learned. Based upon what
She's saying,
Well,
do they come up with the first primary?
Oh, do they come up with the mission? That's a good discussion. Yeah, have that discussion.
Oh, no, does the senior, is that what they do? Do they come up with the mission?
Well, if we got a writer
Brandon over there.
Oh.
you got a
Shorter,
Roger.
and then we like to do a nice
Decision maker.
We look at the, you know, and what's up?
What was it 6 to, no, was it
6
6 to
She
12 months,
said
wasn't
6
it?
to 12 or 6 to 18.
Decisions about what?
Day-to-day.
More decision makers regarding.
Was it a bit?
Day-to-day.
They're looking at what they want.
Yeah, that's like the
Plan.
day-to-day decisions.
It's planned.
Put day-to-day out.
Anybody need anything?
Anyway, I think you
Forming an effective one of the things that occurred to me last night when we were talking about this being out of teams is it seems like the senior leadership team has to identify what are going to be the teams, and if you're starting from scratch, who's going to be the leaders of those teams? It's
I think that goes with the 6 like focus though. And I think you have to, as soon as you met, kind of, you know what I mean, start getting a plan about where you're going to go, and then you're.
You talked about design.
I think too, that
There
it's
were
decision making. That's
three
decide
point
who's gonna be
on
what.
the sheet.
It's all under that.
When I was looking at that last night about the Ryan facilities, I mean, he could have done it any way he wanted, right? That he had 4 teams and he decided they were gonna be divided up the way they were. He could have divided it up differently.
We were talking about design.
So that coming up with, we're gonna have 4 teams, and then I'm gonna need somebody to lead those 4 teams, who's gonna be on them. Sounds like that would be a lot, that would be pretty time consuming
Does
for
the
him.
senior leadership team, do they identify who the coordinators of every different parish are? I mean, do they do that?
What they talked about was the pastoral council is
How do
a
they,
vision,
first of all,
and
isn't it
it's overall vision, like, okay, we need to.
they're there to help the priests take responsibility off of. So, how do
This is the mission statement for this parish is encountering Jesus, making disciples, and transforming lives. And you see it out in the So if we say it's
But isn't that what
pastoral
they're asking? They're asking if we were just to
one of
open
the
up.
priorities is to encounter Jesus, and we, to do that,
What was that? Say
we
that
build
again.
that
Rephrase
into
that.
our pastoral plan.
To me, it sounds like
And
the
the senior leadership
is
team,
to help the pastor.
we turn that over to them
Take
to
responsibility off of
design
that.
how it's
So
going to
first
be
of all,
accomplished
if you're just opening
and
up your doors,
implement
you have to have a senior
that
leadership.
vision
How do
of
you identify
encountering
who the
Jesus.
senior leadership team
And then
is?
as they do
What
something like,
responsibility do they
let's say
each have
Alpha,
that helps
implement
the pastor
Alpha,
not have to?
then you run through a program of Alpha and assess it and improve on that for the next time. So that you're continually improving your design and implementation of what you're doing so that you're growing.
But once they are identified, how do they respond to particular?
But in terms of like,
Immediate advisors, day-to-day, they're leading with.
Remember the term that was used before that at least kind of resonates with me, jump in here if I got it wrong, like teammates, right?
And they were
They're actually,
the yellow sheet talks about,
they're part of the,
well, the excellence of delivery.
the
You mentioned that's the improvement
day-to-day
part.
decision making.
So you assess it, how well did we deliver it, how well did we put on the Alpha program? Okay, what can we
But
do
then that
next
term
time? How do we get more people?
advisor
How do we make
versus
it
decision
more
maker
meaningful?
doesn't convey the same
And
meaning.
then you evaluate.
If I'm advising him and he's
It's a little
making
hard
the
to
decision,
evaluate.
that's different than if I'm making the
You know, maybe
decision.
how many people you
And,
learned
and
Alpha,
so that's
how
gonna
many
be
is your program?
the word just
Things
doesn't
like
seem
that.
the same.
And then it's more, they're involved more in the operations of the parish. And the reason that is because they're primarily consisting of staff who see day to day what's going on and react to that and know what needs to be done in the parish. And a lot of that in the senior leadership team is to free up the pastor from having to make all the little decisions and things. For instance,
Is that the question? What do they do? What are they?
the director of
That's the
operations
same
will
question.
come to
I think it's more about, well, I think the intent for our understanding is both. The context, I believe, is
most of the things that he does,
identify an activity, a verb or a thing, and determine, okay, is that in scope or out of scope? Which I'm guessing is out of scope would be the parish council. Yeah, and sometimes knowing what an organization does, yeah, I think it's also helpful to know what that thing is that the organization does not do, right?
And not everybody, they don't wait for you to make a decision.
The SOT would be responsible for?
They do long-term
Yes.
Okay, so
And
short-term plan?
we implement
I didn't drag
plan.
no matter what.
So we're the doers.
So we have.
So is that verb implement?
It's a team approach.
Yeah.
She also you have to work close.
Right, we work together.
She also said we're starting out at 8 though, and here she said
You're not always
creation
able
of
to
team
do
and formation. So formation is sort of when you first starting out, and she said the strength finders, they find out. So I think before you can really start to head, you gotta make sure your base and your foundation.
Yeah.
Your balance.
Balance.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's important.
I think those are kids will put when they talk, what do you spend your time doing?
Not that we
And
have to
some,
design how.
it's like 10% profit, and 10%
Yeah.
sacrifice in doing things.
Because I'm trying to just let go of your current structure
Doing all the little
and what
things,
you're doing.
meeting people and everything,
So
to try to
there's a little hint on this yellow page. It's in your books, might help jumpstart this a little bit. That's okay, but just get you jumpstarted. So, what does the senior leadership team do? And this is just a tiny little start, but flesh it out a little more, guys. Yeah, so on one side is pastoral council, on the other side is senior leadership team. Yes, yeah, right there. Make sure to take, oh, here, take this one, because I think I just took that piece of paper out of it.
I'm sorry, Chief.
We oversee the operation.
making sure that on the senior leadership team, that everybody shares
So,
common
So
vision.
they probably have to talk about what our culture is in our parish now. Think about what we would like to do down here too, right? I mean, like, their culture right now, people come in and go to church and they go home. That's what we did. What do we want it to look like? We want it to look like they can't wait to come to church, and they don't want to leave church, and they want to go out there and be disciples. Yeah. Right? Is that what the senior leadership team?
Yeah. Whereas
Senior leadership
And even culture changes. once it's
Yeah,
said.
well,
Yeah,
what it is
yes,
now.
it is to where we need to be.
What do we want it to be,
The way
and
I
how do we
looked at
get from
that
there to
was,
there?
for instance, I
That
don't know, a couple years ago,
part of the senior
before you were on the
they kind
council,
of like
we
say
had
where we
some
want to go.
called mixers where
Helps
we
us
met
decide
and had
what
joint
they're
meetings with
I love that you
development,
use that word
finance,
where,
the other
because
committees
it's
there.
in the Army,
And talked about.
we use these terms,
This was
vision,
after the
there's
first
an order to them,
survey
right? I think even in
the
the
developmental
civilian
committee
survey,
survey.
they use similar
And
terms,
was
but
what
vision,
do we do
where do you want to be,
engage
right?
youth?
The other word that I heard was
Different
watch.
ways of looking, focusing on
That's
different
the
areas.
mission.
Right.
How,
Yeah.
how you want to get there, that's a strategy, that's a plan.
So,
How many people go to church?
how many alphas will we run this year, and how do we expand our capacity so we can deliver that?
Do as a
That's
parish here,
the
what's
senior
our
leadership
goal?
team sort of
Would be
makes
to.
those.
Yep, that would be a senior leadership team discussion, right?
So that.
How do we increase our capacity so we can do more
As I
alphas?
saw it, focus on that, and then we turn it over to
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
and then we turn that over to the senior leadership team.
Yeah.
There's also, It's also
Design-
operate the parish,
design-
get
yeah,
decisions
figure
made
out a way
quickly,
to
the decision-making
look at
team.
youth group or
And so, and it's things like, okay, our vision is to make disciples. So what are we doing to make disciples? What's not working? What do we need to tweak? Where do we need to hire somebody? Where do we need, what's our process for getting people, from a first-time guest to fully engaged? What's our process for that? So those are all kinds of things the senior leadership team will talk about. Yeah, but also like operations. It's like, okay, everybody around the table, Lenten Tridium is coming. So are we going to do something for discipleship? Do we want to do something with evangelization? Do we want to do something with Alpha?
Access to studies so that they can look at it and see what we need to do. Make it focus
Who are
on
these people? Yeah, leadership team is here, and they lead out a team. Nobody reports to anybody. Everybody is coached and supported to bring their gifts and talents.
I guess I got the
Yeah, that's okay. Because that's part of the paradigm shift. That's why I mention it, because it's a real, we're going to make that change. Nobody reports to anybody, okay? You are a servant leader, and you are supporting, you are coaching, you are enabling people to use their gifts for the greater glory of God.
So that everyone on the senior leadership team is committed to have the same vision and committed to moving forward and implementing these programs, so that you don't have.
I really don't want to have to do interview.
We're either sitting there.
Trust her.
So when we're talking about the different programs that we have, adult formation and youth formation and all the different duties from the staff, that they're all looking at the same thing and supporting each other and complementing each other in what they're doing, as opposed to each one having a silo and you have one staff.
One more minute. But we're gonna move. Fill it up. But I've got some stuff up here. How's it going? We're gonna move on, okay? But I'm gonna post up and you're gonna look at your notes, and because this is for you. You don't have to share that with anybody else. This is for your parish, okay? But this is for you guys as a working thing. So this was for you guys, your parish, right? So all that stuff in. Oh, are you? Who's your coach? Is Ron your coach? Oh my gosh, how cool. Oh my gosh, I thought I recognized your name. Yeah. So how's it going? Good. Are you still in the network? You got out of it. You got enough to get jump started. Yeah, are you using the DRA now? Because we'll talk about that, because they just set that up. So all the videos and all that stuff. So I think it's like, I don't know, it might be $2,000 a year, but then you get access to everything. And it's really, like I think there's 26 alpha videos, and they're all 20 minutes. And I'm making an 8-series videos on pastoral counseling. It's like step by step. So anyways, just thought I'd mention that. Well, for $2,000, you get everything for the whole year. All right, let's move on then. So here's a couple of ideas. Let's take a look at what you guys came up with. So what do senior leadership teams do? Okay, decision-making machine. You'll hear Ron Huntley talk about that all the time. And it's all about operational excellence. What are we doing? How is the weekend experience? What's working well? What isn't? What do we need to improve? We want people to encounter Jesus over here. So what's working, what's not working in Alpha? What do we have to improve? And I'll use an example. Like we were doing Alpha, and we were about 2-3 years in, and Alpha was like, our numbers were like this. More and more people were coming. We were seeing lots of fruit, lots of changed lives, and we were like, man, we're good. You know? And we're like this. And then all of a sudden, it kind of went, and we were like, oh, what happened? So we were kind of thinking, we're on a roll here. But with the senior leadership team, because they're looking at operations and bearing fruit and transforming lives, they had to stop and kind of look at all the data, like, what's going on? It seems it's not growing, it seems to be dying off. And they did some brainstorming and thinking, and we realized people weren't inviting. So all the parishioners were coming to Alpha, and they were bringing friends, you know, but we were like 80% parishioners, 20%, you know, we'll call them unchurched or, you know, guests, right? So, but by this time we'd kind of gotten most of the parishioners who were going to go do it, had kind of gone through, and then it dropped off. And we were thinking about, what is evangelization? Well, big part of evangelization is being invited. And our parishioners were not comfortable with inviting people, didn't know how to invite people, because, like, we're Catholics. I'm not going to go up to this guy I work with and say, hey, want you to come to this Alpha thing with me. Like, that just felt weird to me in the beginning. Now I invite everybody. But so we realized, as the senior leadership team, by looking at the operations, looking at the results, are we bearing fruit, analyzing what was happening, realized we were not focusing on being an invitational church. So that was an area that we had to start focusing on. So next thing out comes a preaching series on how to invite. Then, so people were like, we got people going on inviting, but then people would say, well, we got feedback, well, I invited them, and then they said no, and I really felt uncomfortable. And then we realized, wait a minute, it's not your job to get the person into Alpha, it's just your job to do the invitation. So what you celebrate and what you tolerate establishes your culture. So we started profiling people that were making lots of invitations, but not necessarily having people come. And one lady, you know, stood up and said, I invited 9 people, but 1 came. And we all cheered and celebrated. So then the culture changed. It was like, yeah, I'm just going to be inviting. We also had to help people understand and build up confidence that when I invite my neighbor or somebody I work with or a family person, I have confidence that they're going to have a positive experience. So radical hospitality, especially with the Alpha experience, but also with my Mass, if I invited them to join me at Mass, that has to be a pretty positive experience, okay? There's a whole, like, be a what do they call, a secret shopper or whatever. Like, go to someone else's church because you know your own. And just look around, what do you see, what do you smell, what do you hear, and, and there's a funny video, I'll send you guys out. It was like, what if Starbucks was like a church? And like, does someone greet you at the door? Do they make you climb over someone to get into a chair? But do you know when to stand up and sit down? Do you know where the washrooms are? Like, do you feel comfortable? So we also had to start working on radical hospitality so that parishioners who were learning how to invite at least had confidence when the people that did come were going to have a positive experience. Senior leadership team worked through that stuff with staff and with all the key ministry leaders. Okay? Because it's an operations excellence. How can we continuously improve what we're doing? And we had to invent some processes. Like, we had to overhaul our hospitality process and how people did hospitality. Senior leadership team are leaders of leaders. We talked about this yesterday. And they've got to be careful not to fall into the doers. And I shared an example, you know, so we had our coordinator of children's religious education who had come from a smaller church. She did it all. She prepared the crafts. She did the research. You know, she recruited a couple of parents to help. And now she's in a church 3 times the size. She was just like, that's not going to work. So the senior leadership team, with this, she was a staff person, we started coaching into her to help her be a leader and help her learn to be a leader of leaders. So our senior leadership team was constantly coaching out into the staff and out into ministry leaders, okay? But I don't do the catechetics. Like right now, hospitality, there's a member on our staff who's responsible for evangelization, and we're calling it connectedness or engagement. So it's like how people are, it's your first impression right on to signing up. And hospitality falls under that. But I do hospitality. I've got the 4 masses, and I've got teams that do the scheduling and where we're going to go. And she and I like check in maybe once every 2 months to make sure we're on strategy or we're on with the culture. But she coaches into me if there's anything I need to know and to change. Does that help? Parish operations. I will tell you from a pastoral council perspective, like, I don't care if the door is broken. I don't care if you're meeting this year's budget. You know, it's just, that's operations, it's a senior leadership team, it's a growing staff, and it's all the parishioners. Every single parishioner is in a ministry. Okay? I think we have 450 people every weekend to help us do the masses. And now you guys might have as many. If you take a look at like between your greeters, your lectors, ministers of the Eucharist, what am I missing? Altar servers. Fire. And you guys, I don't know, do you have to worry about guns here? I know they do in Texas. So it's kind of like, oh, fire. Oh, choir. Sorry, music. Yes, music. You know. So, but if you added that all up, but every single parishioner is a disciple using their God-given gifts. And so we're constantly creating opportunities for them. This is a big part of senior leadership team. You design, implement, and improve processes. Because it's all about parish operations. Well, what do you mean by processes? Like, okay, we talked, what is our process for leadership development? So we implemented a leadership pipeline because we got it from Alpha as a culture. Remember I said you come to Alpha, then you're invited onto the Alpha team, so maybe you're in the kitchen, and then the next Alpha, maybe you're a table leader in Alpha, and by this time you've gone through 3 Alphas. Like, do you think this is part of your culture, how you think, how you feel? You're getting more comfortable talking about your faith, you're more comfortable praying over people, you're more comfortable doing praise and worship. A lot of good stuff comes out, but then we kick you out of Alpha because it's a pipeline. We've got to make room for all those other people. So now what do? If you're not already doing something. So now you say, well, I can help out, I'll help out with the hospitality team. I'll help out with ministers of Eucharist. Like, you start to feed in, but you're bringing that Alpha experience. Then let's say you join my hospitality team, then you grow through hospitality. Yeah, Becky.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
When you kick them out, like they're done with
Well, it's not that kind.
I know, but I mean, like,
It's
who,
not really
who is
like
there?
that.
Is there supposed to be someone there helping them to decide where their gift is and where they go from there? I mean, you don't just say, you're done, go find something else.
Discipleship. Yeah, that falls under discipleship. Yeah, because we just talk about it all the time. Like, what are your gifts? And we talk about strength finders. And you guys are way more blessed than we were because you've got Charlie that knows all the Catherine of Siena charisms, which I really think are amazing.
So there's someone that's sort of saying, well, is there a person that's supposed to be saying, okay, well, what are your gifts? Have you figured out your gifts? So what would be good for you?
So who's going to make that process? What is the process for helping parishioners discern their gifts? What is your process? Right? That's senior leadership team should sit down and say, gee, how do we help people figure out their gifts? Okay.
You know, one of the dynamics, and this is probably in every parish, I'm sure, that men as you, one of their struggles they have is guys that have been there for 5, 6 years or more, and they're just staying there. There's no sense of, we need to go.
Remember, there's a bottleneck and then the bottle opener.
I think we get comfortable.
Yep.
And we just stay there, but goes back to the process. How do we help people transition out of these groups and to lead and to mature in discipleship and in leadership.
Yep, that's a big SLT discussion. So ministry onboarding, leadership development. So clearly you're going to, especially pastoral council, you're going to pretty soon discover, hey, we don't have enough leaders. That's clearly got to be a strategy. Like I haven't met a church yet that has, so how do you develop, so we need more leaders.
What do you mean by boarding, ministry onboarding?
Oh, how do you get people into ministry? How do you onboard them and orient them and get them on board?
Because they're scared to take over something, and then if you're a leader,
right,
you feel like you're stuck in that leadership position forever.
Right.
Nobody wants to take it over.
That's awful.
Right.
You should change that.
That's what I'm saying.
Stop doing that.
No, but I mean, I would love, people aren't easily like, oh yeah, I'll do that for you. I'll take over. You put it out there, and no one wants to do it, and so then you don't want it to go away, so you keep doing it.
You keep doing it, and you're getting burnt out.
Even if you're not getting burned out, you maybe want to move on to something else,
Yeah.
try something else. But you don't want that ministry to go away.
Yep.
So
you keep hanging on to it.
Yeah.
And then there's other people who's like, this is my fiefdom.
Oh.
Don't you dare. And it will be done my way. And I don't care what they say at the pastoral office. This is how I do it. Sometimes we call them the loyal opposition. And those are the people that, like, as you start making change, like, this isn't all going to be like just a flip switch, right? Right? It's going to take a long time.
I was just telling Becky, I think the whole element of faith,
yeah,
we need to talk about. We get anxious, oh God, who's going to take this over? It's just like, if God wants something, he's going to provide. Like you said last night, he's going to provide. The resources are already there. It's just a matter of, it's like tapping into an underwater spring. It's there. We just, through discernment and prayer, I think we have to be patient and really believing and trusting that God's going to provide the people and the leadership we need. I mean, I've seen that. I'm sure the other priests here have seen that too. He provided, let us show up.
Well, guys, I highly recommend reading Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Church.
Yeah.
Because he talks about, as lead pastor, he was the master of saying no.
Yeah.
Somebody comes and says, we should have a quilt bazaar. No. I'm not doing it, right? No, because that serves these people. We have to define our process. I like the word process. I think we say. Let's say process.
Process, yeah.
We say process. Our process for making disciples.
Yeah.
Right?
What's your process?
That's our main thing. I mean, when all the extraneous things that we say no.
Yeah. So senior leadership team took that on because right there's your vision. It says making disciples. So when I come back here in 5 years' time, I want to see your process for making disciples. Chris, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you.
What Becky was talking about, though, that's a senior leadership team that breaks those things down into pieces and coaches the people to say, this is the term for your, could you do this for 6 months?
Yeah.
Most people will be like, I could do that for 6 months. It's when you give them an open-ended thing that they start to freeze up. And so then it's my understanding the senior leadership team would help define that and help coach that person who's doing
And I'll share another example with you. I'll get to you in a second, Brad. So remember I said Alpha is a culture. Okay, I'll tell you right now, every parish we've ever worked with that treated Alpha as a program or treated Alpha as a process failed. Broke our hearts because we were like pouring a lot of energy into a lot of parishes, and we kept thinking, it's the parishes that adopt it as a culture. We all encounter Jesus. We all invite all the time. We all give radical hospitality, right? It's our culture. And then we looked at how things are done in Alpha and we integrated in. So in Alpha, there is a leadership pipeline. Like it's designed that way when we get trained, right? And it's like you come to Alpha and you go on team, blah, blah, blah. So they were saying, well, so how do we do that with every ministry? So we started with a program, we called it Say Yes and First Serve. So every ministry sat down, we asked them, every ministry, to look at what your ministry does and identify the things that are just like really simple, low commitment, put your toe in activities. Because if you come up and say, hey, would you like to join the hospitality team? Like you're like, I don't know what's involved, what's my commitment, how much time, and you're going to say no. Unless you're a huge extrovert like me, and you're like, yeah. But anyways, so we identified, every ministry started to identify what were easy ways to get started. And then we have a pipeline through each ministry. And then we had, and right out of the gate, this is one of probably the very first issues we dealt with, was ministry leadership. Because we had some ministries that didn't have a leader, and there was nobody in the parish supporting them. They were just kind of over there somewhere. We didn't even know they existed until pastoral council started doing analysis. There's people who had leaders, wonderful people, but they were burnt out. We had leaders that absolutely were toxic and should not be leaders, okay? And what else did we have? Well, those are kind of the gist of them. I'll share a story. My, at the time, 84-year-old mother had started out a prayer tree when we were one of the smaller parishes, or one of the 3 original parishes. So people would come up to her. She would literally handwrite it out, and she would type up and then photocopy it and send them out to all these people. And she was always recruiting people to be on the prayer tree. But like, she was it. But she was really called to do this. Now we're 3 parishes all in one, and it was starting to get overwhelming. And now she's like, you know, pushing 86 years old, and she's exhausted, and people want to do it on the computer, and she doesn't know how to do the computer. She wanted to just give it to the staff, like give it to the parish. They should do this, right? You should do this. You're going to have people come to you all the time. You should do it, especially once your vision starts rolling out and everybody's like, yeah, okay, then we should do this, and this. And my mom couldn't find someone else to take it on, and it was just killing her. And I actually had to sit down with her one time, and I just said, Mom, maybe it's time for this ministry to just die a natural death, because I firmly believe with the transformations going on in this parish that something is going to replace it that's probably, you know, more appropriate or more relevant for where we're going in the future. And it's not that what you're doing is not valued, but it might not be in priority. And then I shared with her, because our priority, as I was doing this strategic thing, is going to be alpha. Every extra dollar, every extra hour, every extra everything will go into alpha. We're not going to pick up this ministry and revive it or keep it going. And it was really hard for her, and she had to go through a lot of emotional stuff. But I said, but the other side is like, take it to prayer. If the Holy Spirit really wants this. So she started taking it to prayer, and about 9 months in, guess what happened? 3 parishioners that she had spoken to earlier stepped up to the plate, and one of them put it on the web page and the internet, and the other one did a distribution list, and it kept going, right? But she didn't know what to do with it, and she was afraid to let it go, and it was just causing a great deal of stress. So that's just one example. Yeah.
I think what you were describing earlier isn't actually 3 different people, or different people. I think it's stages of where you are, because it's like you have somebody who's excited about the ministry, and they're starting to get burnt out, but they're afraid if they don't stay, it's going to die.
Yeah.
Right. So then you hit the burnout, and then because you're imprisoned now, then you become toxic.
Yeah.
And it isn't like you have a toxic person. It's like we created that toxic person.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the way of.
And there's no joy.
Right, and letting go.
Like our mission is to make disciples who joyfully live out the mission of Jesus Christ. That's our mission statement.
Eileen, I'm just going to be your timekeeper. So.
Oh, great, thank you.
10:20 and break was at 10.
Oh, thank you. You're very good.
I'm just saying.
Thank you. All right, and I'll just wrap this up and we're going to break. Thank you very much. So, raising people up, looking at the culture, excellence, staying on budget. Pastoral Council doesn't care, but operate like the senior leadership team would. Problem solving, like how do we close the gaps? So we want to make disciples. How are we doing? How do we close that gap? Okay? Yes?
Real quick, I think you mentioned it in one of your videos that the SLT focus is more within the parish, the culture, the trends, whereas pastoral council is more outside the parish, looking in, which would be, I guess, outreach, evangelization. How do we reach the people who have not been reached?
Yeah, sometimes it's at the outside looking in view versus SLT is inside looking out.
Immediate and going out.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break. I've got 10:20. Would 10:30 be okay? 10 minutes? Yeah.
So all this is kind of presuming that SLT comes equipped with the ability to read, to analyze, and has all the skills. I was on it before, so is there something that's why I found successful? And it's just trying to keep them great.
Yep.
Identify those folks who have the brains for different attributes. But is there a program or something that you found that helps build those SLT?
Okay, you get it. Yeah.
So I get that. But you also can't just be somebody. So was yours.
Right. Yes.
Because I can see where there used to be definitely a different flavor.
Yeah. Yeah. So we use Patrick Lencioni's work, and did you know he's like a super active Catholic, and he's doing all kinds of stuff. So he looked at a healthy organization with high trust and vulnerability and leaning into each other's strengths. We know from the corporate world that makes for a very strong team. So he's applying it to the church world, and we latched on to strategic planning. I coached executives, and I was working with Father James, and I kept bringing this Patrick Lencioni stuff, and then we discovered he was Catholic, and they was like, oh, okay, and now he and Patrick Lencioni are like best friends. I was like, he's my idol. So anything by Patrick Lencioni, we integrated that, and you'll see it in the book when you read Divine Renovation. It's more the guidelines, because the book was written when we were just starting a senior leadership team. The guidebook came out once we had a leadership team up and running. But yeah, so we use a lot of Patrick Lencioni stuff about, building trust, etc. But the other thing that's very, very high for us is experiencing the Holy Spirit. And I'll show you in a little while some of our meeting agendas. It's at least 30 minutes. Praise, worship, prayer. Because we're doing God's will. We're discerning God's will. It's not our agenda.
I think that's one of the challenges I have with looking at the world so much. And then looking at it, there's this is different. Very much a lot of similarities. So you can draw from that experience. But you have to be careful not to have your whole SLT from
This is a real world example of what is our priority.
That dynamic has to switch. And sometimes it's different.
Nobody's it's
this is like so we're doing the corporate, we're going to do it here.
Right.
So there's a
But sometimes when I was in corporate, I just said, this is a tool, like a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses. It's a tool, or strengths finders. I use that. Yeah, you're probably familiar with it because we use it in my corporate world.
It is more than how we build our leadership tracks and assess teams and build teams. So
Do you use a Lominger model or the Strength Finders Gallup model? Yeah. Because we have at my company we use the Strength Finders and then we switched to the Lominger. Lominger's all like core competencies and stuff. But anyway, I was like, these are tools.
Right.
And then let's help. So senior leadership team, we get them to do their Strength Finders and we get them to map it out. Well, do you have any holes? Like whole holes? That means you got a blind spot. Are you well balanced team? Well, how do you get to be a well balanced team? And what do you do? The other thing we have found is, especially a parish this size, you've got to start getting staff. And then you've got to be hiring people in and pay the market rate. Okay, none of this like, oh, you're working for the church, so we'll pay you nothing. You know, like that's just stupid.
That should be compensation
Yeah,
enough, right?
that's
Well,
just-
no, we still gotta feed the children.
Yeah, you know, that's just stupid. You know, I'm just like,
Right.
that's one of those older models that has to go, because we're not changing the mission, we're not changing the gospel, but we're definitely changing the models. Because the models we've been using for the last 50 and 100 years are clearly
Not sustainable, not
working.
scalable.
Right. Oh, I love sustainable and scalable. That's what we're going to be talking about. And that's a big part of what an SLT does. Okay, so when I'm saying design processes, how do we scale up? Like I've been talking to a lot of guys, like we're doing alpha, but we can't scale. We can't do more, but yet we've got a waiting list. So I said, then you have process problems. Like you need to figure out how you do it, and how do you expand your capacity. The only way you can expand capacity is by leading through people. You're going to need more teams, and you're going to need to empower them. So how do you do that? Well, you have to learn how to coach and not exactly.
We have a history of, we can be great at that, go do it, and you get pulled into things where this is
If we want to do
not what I want to do, but I've said yes, and I know it's a good purpose.
And exactly. Now
So
I
I'm gonna
feel.
stick with it, but now I feel burdened.
That have to be told, no, you can't have it
That's
without
part
that.
of it. Yes, let's bring you in because I should be great at it. We need somebody.
You're a warm body, there's a cold chair. Come to that. Versus, especially Charlie really gets this, is like we spend a lot of time, and Becky said, we invest more in helping parishioners discern their giftedness and help them listen to what God is calling them to.
But
we had to have a process. How do we make it easy? What is our first serve? Our first step process. So, yeah, a lot of this will be like just how we process this. But there's a certain amount of momentum getting more and more people to experience alpha so that once they've experienced it, they can start to integrate it more as a culture. Like in alpha, like you learn to invite, you learn to do praise and worship in a whole new way, you learn how to pray over each other and care for each other. You experience Christian fellowship, probably like because you're in a little table team and you get to know each other for 10 weeks. You've been on alpha, I can tell.
I've been at Alpha, yeah, and I was at table.
Oh, then you were table host, right?
Yeah.
We had this, right?
Yeah.
So I had to
And
pray
it's
over
amazing, the
and I'm watching people grow.
And trying not to feel responsible for them.
I know. That's why we all have training.
Gosh, I got one more. I got one more. I got to hook them. Just pray.
Yeah, just keep praying. Just keep praying.
Well, thank you for that. I
Yeah.
appreciate it because that was one thing that I'm like, how do we get that?
That's the,
So that
it's growing
Yeah.
into it.
And I'm glad to hear you.
That's the 18 months, 2 years.
When I look
That's
at
not-
pastoral counsel,
that's not
I
next
like what kind of
spring.
skills and experience we bring on. I usually, recommend, if you get somebody with that kind of background, because if you struggle with leadership development, they already know the tools, right? So, like, Father Mark will know nothing